and welcome to ITQ's Private Cloud Café, a new series in which we're going to talk about the value of private cloud, but we're not really going to dive deep into technology. We're going to talk about a little bit more about the different aspects of the private cloud, what it takes, but also, some of the trends and risks we see in the market. We're going to talk about different themes. First and foremost, in this episode, we're going to talk about sovereignty, compliancy, and zero trust. In upcoming episodes, we're going to talk about hybrid versus private, or public versus private. We're going to talk about geopolitics, and we're going to talk about kind of the customer success value of the private cloud. In this very first episode, I brought in a very special guest. It's none other than Mike Janssen.
Thank you, Johan.
Mike, could you briefly introduce yourself and kind of explain to the audience what your role at ITQ is?
Now, Mike Janssen. I am CIO within the ITQ business unit Managed Services. And I have kind of like a free role in getting all the stuff together, like compliancy stuff, but also looking after portfolio and all that kind of stuff.
Besides your role within ITQ, you are very active in kind of the cloud provider space, right?
Yes. Especially the EU and Dutch cloud provider space. Yeah.
And within that space, you're also part of different organizations. Can you kind of briefly talk about what those organizations do and what your role within these organizations is?
I also am a member of the board of the NBIP, for example. That's an organization that does EU-wide kind of like security stuff for internet providers. So where internet providers can't manage themselves due to cost or organizational changes, the NBIP does a central management of those things. And one of those things is, for example, the DDoS protection called the NAWAS. That's for most of the Dutch and a couple of EU service providers protection for DDoS.
And to give the audience a little bit more context about your background, before you joined ITQ, you were CTO of different service providers, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Hosting providers, service providers. I've done several roles, COO, CTO. I've been a security officer. I did a bunch of stuff. So I know the companies, how they work, what they do, and but especially from a CTO, COO perspective.
Right. So, and there's a reason why I invited you over for this specific theme, because, well, listening to your background and the experience you have in the field of cloud service providers, but a little bit broader, like the security aspect. I think it's like sovereignty, compliance, and zero trust are three topics that we hear a lot about in the news, obviously, and sovereignty with all of the geopolitics going on right now is becoming more and more important. So definitely one of the topics that we're going to talk about. Before we dive into kind of the entire conversation, we're going to start every single episode with rapid fire questions.
Okay.
So you will get 5 questions, and the whole idea is to answer as fast as possible. Don't think, just answer. Are you ready?
Yep.
Awesome.
Ready.
Okay, so here's the first one. Data sovereignty, regulatory necessity, or competitive advantage?
It's a competitive advantage.
Okay. Next one, zero trust, a hype or reality?
Reality.
Compliance, a cost center or a value creator?
Value creator.
Sovereignty first or security first?
I can't nuance that, right? I must choose.
You have to choose.
Security.
Security. And then the last one, private cloud, more secure or more controlled?
Also a both thing, but if I must choose, more controlled.
More controlled. Okay, so let's go a little bit through the answers. You kind of stumbled already on the first one: data sovereignty, regulatory necessity, or competitive advantage. Why did you kind of were in doubt?
I think if you look at the EU in the coming years, there will be a lot of regulatory things on the agenda, and that's going to impact us. So, yeah, we must deal with that, and it's kind of a given. And it will expand as geopolitics will continue to evolve. And yeah, it's a competitive advantage if you use it the right way. So if you have all your things in place, which are given us by the laws that are given, yeah, you also have your organization in place, and yeah, that's a big advantage, because it also gives you kind of a structure to scale and grow. So I think that's why I was doubting, because I think that it should be both. The one can do without another.
Yeah.
But if you have to choose, then yeah, I would really make it in these days really an advantage for companies to yeah, to use it as an advantage.
Okay. Some other you were kind of in doubt of. I think compliancy, cost center, or value creator. You were completely like it's a value creator, so you were completely focused. Sovereignty first or security first?
Yeah, if you ask me personally, sovereignty is nothing without security, and sovereignty is all about security. So that's why I kind of stumbled. It is actually the same thing. If you want to be secure, yeah, you have to know where your data resides, who is able to access the data, where is your data, in which law are you active, and yeah, with those kind of things, yeah, that's kind of a compliancy for security. So yeah. If you take the security aspects and you look at what you have to do on the measures to really get secure, then yeah, sovereignty and your private environment is the only way you really can control your security. If it's, for example, in a public environment, in the public cloud, then yeah, you don't know who is able to touch your data. Yeah, you assume that everyone is screened. You assume that for example, the American law is not doing any strange things, which is really doubtful these last days. So yeah, so keeping it within your own in your own space, security is actually sovereignty.
Okay. I think sovereignty by itself is obviously we're dedicating kind of this episode to it as a theme. I've got some follow-up questions about that, but we'll dive into that in a bit later. And the last one you kind of were in doubt of was private cloud. Is it more secure or more controlled?
Yeah, that's actually the same doubt. So if you control it, you can secure it. And if you don't control it, you can't secure it. So then you are dependent of other parties that secure your environment. And of course, there is a possibility, but yeah, if shit hits the fan, in worst case, you have to pull the plug.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a control you don't have if you do it anywhere else than in an environment where you can really pull the plug. So, yeah.
Okay. I think all great answers, and I think you were right that it's just hard to pick either one of them. Now let's dive a little bit more into today's theme. I got a bunch of questions that we're going to go through. And I might sometimes deviate a little bit from the question because I already have a topic in mind that we definitely need to touch upon. But let's start with the first question. So, what's the harsh truth organizations must accept about sovereignty and data compliance?
The hard truth is Europe will change in laws, and Europe will not sit back and watch other nations kind of control what we should do and what we should not do. And we're starting to get our own mindset, our own feelings, and that comes with our own sovereignty and our own compliancy.
And do you think that Europe moves away from kind of the way that the US law is structured, or law in other sides of the world is structured or set up? Is it going to be like something completely different? Or do you feel it's going to kind of grow more together as opposite as it is now?
No, I think it will grow out of each other. So we're depending on other laws and how other people or countries do stuff, and we kind of anticipated on that. And what we have to do now, in my opinion, is keeps our back straight, define our own policies, define our own innovations, and get back on the stage again. Because as Europe, we're not really on the stage right now. And I think if you look at any news article at this point about geopolitics, that you see that European government or the EU is kind of the third wheel on the wagon. And that has to change. And that has a huge impact on IT.
Do you think it will change?
It will change. Only, EU is not as fast as we are with a lot of countries. And there are people who can do a veto about stuff. So it will take a lot of time, but we'll get there. And you see that we're already acting more quickly than we ever did before. Still slow, but if we keep this pace, I think we can really make a difference in a few years.
So in the rapid fire questions, we already talked a little bit about private cloud. So how does private cloud genuinely simplify sovereignty and compliance compared to public clouds?
The most important thing is jurisdiction. So if you have everything under the EU law, then you know sovereignty is for sure. Because if you look at the public cloud, you see that big hyperscalers are now talking about sovereignty within their US or China-based cloud. But to be honest, there isn't any regulation that prevents them to do otherwise. They're still under other jurisdictions, or the US law, or the Chinese government, we have to do it ourselves. So if we don't do it ourselves, if we don't build private clouds, private environments, which we control by ourselves, and of course we can use US-based software on it. It doesn't have to be open source for everything. Or even hardware. We should be definitely monitoring if no data is going out to other countries, but we can really make that happen.
So I think you touched upon a great point here, and that's that a private cloud could be hosted somewhere else, could be in your own data center. Until what point do you want to ensure sovereignty? I mean, it's honestly impossible to put hardware in your data center that's built by European companies because we don't have them. Yes, Dell has a huge factory for instance, in Ireland, but the hardware by itself is designed outside of out of Europe. Most of the kind of cloud management platforms, if you will, have been developed outside of Europe, but still, it's great software. So, to what extent do you think that organizations need to build upon that sovereignty kind of compliancy or sovereignty policy, if you will?
Yep.
And to what extent do you kind of want to start trusting organizations like OEMs to ensure you that whatever you buy from them is kind of sovereign, or is not necessarily sovereign, but does not pose risks when it comes to sovereignty?
I think that's a good question, because that demarcation is kind of blur for a lot of people. But my honest opinion is, if they don't have access to that environment, to your private cloud, or it isn't streaming constantly data outside of the cloud to their kind of like a call home thing, then you're kind of safe. So hardware...
Kind of safe?
Yeah, because to be honest, if we buy Chinese stuff and we know it's good and we can control the software and we know what's going on there, we still have the feeling there could be a backdoor in there. And maybe we're right. We actually don't know. So demarcating the outgoing to the internet is important. So that's one of the rules you have to think about, is when you buy non-European stuff and you want to control that it's not going to be turned off by regulations from outside the EU, and you don't want you want to be sure that your data is safe, is do it in as EU much possible cloud environment. And if you use hardware, software from another nation, then you should actually monitor what's going outside of your network.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Mike. And we're going to talk about zero trust in a bit. I think trusting or not trusting organizations or ISVs or OEMs on building something and that you kind of buy and use in your own platforms or your private cloud platforms. I think it's really important to not trust it and to control it, monitor it. But how should organizations assess risks when it comes to choosing the right OEM or choosing the right cloud provider platform, or solutions that are really important in a private cloud platform?
Yeah, I know what you mean. That's normally in a not so changing world, you look at the policies that certain nations or countries are developing, and if you know what they're developing, you kind of know where you're going with their kind of own risk assessment or European thoughts about complying to European policies. But I think it's a good thing to assess those risks and do a risk qualification on it. You can look at the companies, the company policies, where they're from, so you can do a risk analysis on the region where it comes from, where it's built, who built it. For example, Dell does a lot of stuff in Ireland. We can kind of monitor that product, of the process of making the product. That doesn't say it all, of course, but at that point you can say, okay, it's built in the EU. That's kind of a risk qualification that may lower the risk for a big deal. And for software, yeah, that's always a tricky question because, who can you trust?
Yeah.
It's a difficult question because from the Chinese, they're open we try to get your stuff. They don't say it actually like this, but they don't deny it also. But if you look to, for example, America, they don't say it. But actually, do we trust that?
Yeah.
I don't know. So it's an analysis that you have to do based on your own environment. So if you have really classified data, then the controls get higher and higher and higher. If you have data, where you think, okay, if this leaks to U.S. government and they do something with it, no, that's not a very big risk for us, because if they expose that, then they expose themselves.
Yeah.
It's an analysis for based on the data that you have versus what's the policy of the company, and above that, what's the policy of the nation where it's coming from.
And you talked again about like trust and zero trust. Also, like achieving zero trust in a private cloud environment seems a lot easier or doable even. But what about public cloud? Like, is it realistic to achieve a full zero trust solution or environment or strategy in a public cloud environment?
It's a good question. Because I have my own opinion about zero trust. Because I see a lot of companies and vendors say, if you implement our environment, then you have zero trust implemented. And I really disagree about all those statements. It's all bollocks. Because the really zero trust is a mindset.
Yeah.
And it's not a product or
it's not a checkbox. It's not like
no.
So if you indeed, if you would now kind of go to Google or any other search engine and you would look for zero trust, there are several companies that offer you zero trust as a service.
Yeah, and that's
just a load of crap.
Yes, yeah, really crap. Yeah. So if you have a company, you have a good CISO, and that CISO has a really good zero trust policy, he should do a lot of stuff within a company to get that mindset between the ears of all the employees, from developers to sales to everyone. And of course, there's a lot of technical stuff you can do to create measures of zero trust and kind of like if you do kind of technical measures, you know there are lowering risks that you do. But it's a mindset. So if you think I buy this kind of firewall or this kind of EDR or this kind of other security software or SOC, and you think you have zero trust, that's not the case.
So am I kind of summarizing what you said, and kind of a bold statement here. So zero trust is just about mindset, and we use technology to mitigate risks that are posed by human behavior.
Yeah, that's kind of correct. So back to your question, is public cloud and zero trust a good match? No.
Yeah.
No, it isn't, because it is a mindset, and the public clouds have a mindset of their own, and you can't force your mindset onto a hyperscaler. You can force your mindset on a controlled environment.
Okay, so you zero trust and public cloud is impossible. What about kind of compliancy in regards to public cloud? I mean, how do organizations underestimate the complexity of compliance in public cloud?
I don't think it's really complex, to be honest, because public cloud has its own compliancy. It doesn't fit our needs. It has its own compliancy rules. And if your compliancy fits in the public cloud, then you're good to go. But if it doesn't, you're not good to go. So then you have to go hybrid or even private, but the compliancy rules from, for example, the EU, you see that the hyperscalers kind of adjusting to that, and they even try to sell sovereign clouds on the hyperscalers. I don't think that's a possibility, but they're moving towards the EU compliancy.
It feels a little bit like Ferrari is now building a hybrid car with a battery, and suddenly they have a car that has like a zero emission or low emission, whereas we all know that there's still like a 6-liter V12 in that car, powered or backed up by the battery and an electric motor, but suddenly it's a kind of a ecological vehicle.
Yeah. That's kind of like the statement I'm trying to make. But you have in the EU, you have kind of compliancy on different levels. So you have the EU level, and that's getting more tighter and tighter with the NIS2 coming up and GDPR and that kind of stuff. But it's also within a country, you have kind of regulations. And the hyperscalers looking to the EU, but not to the countries. And then there's a lower level that if you have really important data, you may have your own set of rules. And then, you're falling out of every hyperscaler compliancy. Because if you have your compliancy set in rules, and you have really important data, and you want to protect it, and it's really secret, and you don't want to leak it to other nations, then a hyperscaler is not compliant at all.
So in short, if you would deviate from kind of the regulatory and the compliance like the regulations from a hyperscaler, if you deviate from that, then automatically you have to do something else.
Yeah. So the importance for every company, not the very small companies or the companies who don't have any data that's very important, is, okay, first make your own compliancy rules. If you set those compliancy rules, check if they match with a public cloud. And if you want to use that, that's okay. And there are other kind of aspects that you might not want to have a public cloud. But from a compliancy perspective, build your own rules, test them to the hyperscalers, and if they fail, don't change your rules, do something else.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. And especially and this is also definitely a question I didn't prepare, but you triggered me to something, is that we have a lot of customers now looking into public cloud for AI workloads. And they want to use a large language model or a public AI service, but now they have private data they want to put in that. So what's your take on that? So a customer has like private data that does not or should not be leaked to the public. So there's certain IP or data privacy or whatsoever that's tied to the data, and now they want to use a public service. Is that possible at all?
Technically, it's possible, but kind of, do you want it? And that's also based on your own compliance rules, of course. But if you look, for example, at Adobe, Adobe is really going to a cloud model with services instead of perpetual licenses, and you can store all your graphical thoughts and creativity in that cloud. To be honest, they leaked a ton of data, and I would think a few years ago, Adobe, that's a good company. They have a lot of money. They have the security, and they have everything on par. So why should I hesitate to put all my creativity and all my ideas in the cloud? There shouldn't be a problem until there's a leak. And to be honest, if you look at the big tech, Microsoft was in the news with SharePoint, NVIDIA was in the news. There are a lot of big tech companies where you think you're fully protected because they're big organizations, big tech, they have their own regulations in order, they have the security on par. This ain't gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah, and I think this is just one of the essential parts when it comes to defining also your company risks, because a lot of companies used to be kind of a traditional companies and now are becoming tech companies as we speak. Like the average governmental agency nowadays has massive IT teams because they're slowly becoming an IT company and heavily depending on that. So yeah, I think that definitely should be part of your risk assessment within your company as well.
Absolutely.
So as the CIO for ITQ's MSP business unit, you also have conversations with customers, right?
Right. Yeah.
So can you share a concrete example of how private cloud improves security and compliancy outcomes for a customer?
Yeah, I can. I don't like to talk about customer cases because when I go a little bit in depth, you might recognize the customer, and I don't want to expose our customers' strategy in that. But yeah, let's talk about hospitals in general. We have customers that run hospitals, and yeah, they really need private cloud for two things. And one example is they don't want to be restricted by internet access. So if you're, you can imagine, if you're doing surgery, for example, and your internet connection fails and you don't see the screens you need to see, then it's really getting hard to do the operation. So they want to keep it as close as possible to the work field.
Yeah.
And the other one is, of course, those images are really personal data. So the CIOs of those hospitals, they say, yeah, we have to keep them safe. And yeah, sometimes they don't even feel that they're safe within the hospital, because if something can or is breached in the environment, yeah, they kind of want to offload their archives to something or somewhere which really is more than private to keep them secured. So that are these types of compliance you see the most. So we keep the data inside because we need it in the work field. A lot of factories, for example, also do that. They don't want to be dependent on cloud. And also the data, that's really important. It's really personal. And it's really their gold, to be honest. Yeah, they want to keep that private.
And this is not a single specific customer example, right? This is something that we see with a lot of customers, and independent of kind of the industry. You mentioned healthcare, but public services, municipalities, they all face the same challenge there.
Yeah. Yes.
So kind of let's focus a little bit more on the call to action, because now we know what compliance entails. We know the challenge that we face, especially when it comes to public clouds. We've learned a lot about zero trust. What organizational change, especially looking at our customers or companies in general, what organizational change must companies embrace to fully benefit from private cloud in terms of compliance?
Also a good question again, Johan. I think the first thing you have to do and maybe companies already did that, is do a new risk analysis. And the context analysis, that's the most important one, because the context says, okay, in which age are we living, how important is data, what's the geopolitics doing, what's the upcoming laws from the EU, how should I anticipate on that? That should be your new context where you define your risk assessment on. So if you have your context in place, so am I doing all the things the EU wants if it comes to the new laws within the next 5 years? And there are a lot of new laws coming up, and you can think of AI Act that's really coming through. NIS2 is already in a few countries active. I think that kind of analysis would be good. And then you do a risk assessment based on that context, and then define, okay, which parts are the most important to me, because those should be in the private cloud these days. You can't take the risk anymore to push everything to hyperscalers and think, okay, we're safe, because, for example, Microsoft is really good at stuff, so we trust them. As we said, zero trust is actually controlling your own environment. So based on the data classification of your environment, you can say, okay, we have very simple stuff to do, which has a low data risk. No, we might even do it in public cloud because it's too expensive to set up ourselves. But if you go to your primary processes and you look at the data that you depend on, and it's really your gold, you really need to build your own company on, that should be in a private cloud.
So one thing you kind of triggered is that quite often risk assessments or risk analysis with an assessment following up is something that companies did once every couple of years.
Yeah.
With the innovation in like software development, in cloud development, cloud services being developed, it's going so fast. What's your take on how often should companies do this?
I think that's an answer in 2 steps. So you have to do what you already did. So look at the coming 5 years and what's coming up, and what is the things we really should take into account, like laws and geopolitics. But I really do think you should review them at least every year. And I don't think there's a lot of big strategic changes coming out there. But it's often the smart little things in your strategy that you can adopt if you do this every year. And yeah, I say your risk assessment is every week, because the field is changing at this moment very rapidly. If you see breaches with vendors and that kind of stuff, you have to take that into account, because there's new information coming up every day, and new information is not some new technology or that kind of stuff, but kind of like a mind shift. So
it could be anything, right?
Yeah.
So,
for example, NetScalers, for example. Yeah, we know they were a little bit buggy the last years. Now there's a really big issue with it. Yeah. Should you change it today? Is there a risk that if you see that the coming of the last few periods they had a problem? Yeah, should you change it then, or should you trust the company that they already fixed it? And that are decisions that you can make even on a quarterly basis.
I think that again a great point that you're touching upon here. So the Netscaler, like there was again a risk being posted in the Netscaler, a bug being exposed, and although we know that like 4 or 5 years ago, I think during one of the first lockdowns in the Netherlands, the Dutch government or parts of the government overnight killed their remote like their workspace capabilities,
Yep.
their solutions because of a risk in the Netscalers.
Yep.
And now 5 years later, the exact same thing happened.
Yeah.
So, do you think that the Dutch government in this case has done a proper risk analysis to avoid such an issue that they had 5 years ago would not happen again?
I think they did, but like zero trust is a mindset shift you have to do. So
Yeah.
normally, if you look in the good old days, if someone had a really buggy software, then and when they fixed it, you had the confidence that it would be fixed for the coming years. But the rapid change of software and the race to be the best in a product, makes some failures. And that's then you have, like I told you before, you have to do the risk analysis also on your vendor, not if it's compliant to all kind of regulations, but also what is its history, and did it learn from itself, and did they do the PDCA cycle for themselves on security? And if you see if it's going wrong every couple of times, you should make choices.
Yeah, and obviously you can't always predict the future. I mean, take the CrowdStrike incident last year. I think CrowdStrike is one of the most valued security companies in the world. Their solutions are very top notch, and still something happened within their own development process, which led to a global outage. So you can't always mitigate everything.
No.
But yeah, you should obviously think about it.
Yeah, and for a CISO, for example, if I would work with CrowdStrike, I would have our CISO say, okay, monitor those instances that are coming up. It's kind of like your vendor management process. So if you see that they're making new mistakes, little mistakes, or they are being flawless, that says something about the future. And it doesn't have any guarantees, but you kind of like see the trend. And for CrowdStrike, for example, I haven't heard any new events, so they probably learned from their mistakes, and that's a good thing. And there are a lot of companies doing that, but again, like CrowdStrike, they're not flawless. So beware where you put your data.
Mike, I think this was so far a great conversation about these topics: sovereignty, compliance, and zero trust. So, did we miss anything, or do you have any famous last words to share?
I think the responsibility of all these things, compliancy, zero trust, security, sovereignty, the responsibility is for the CEO. So the CEO has really have to take in account, I'm responsible for this. Okay, I delegated this to a CIO or a COO or someone else, but he's responsible, and he should double check his CIO and his COO. Are they doing the good things? Because, unfortunately, if you're running a company, then you are responsible for also these kind of things.
Mike, thanks so much for sharing these famous last words. And thanks for being a guest on this very first episode of the Private Cloud Café. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to know more about sovereignty, compliance, zero trust, security, all of the topics mentioned in this episode, drop us an email to info@itq.eu. For now, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode of ITQ's Private Cloud Café.